welcome to Leap Taken. This is Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And today I want to talk about the season, but have hopefully a thought-provoking dialogue about the upcoming holidays and spots that are about to occur. So this is October 1st that I'm recording this, and this is the beginning of what we like to say is spooky season, although for me it already started. But for some people, you know, they're going to be feeling the energies of spooky season, the veil thinning. If you haven't already been, you're definitely going to start feeling it more so. So I think what I would like to try to get across in this video is kind of making you think a little bit if you're watching this on like, so what does this mean exactly? And also, you know, sort of reconciling your stance on death and your concepts of death. So let's get into that. So I was somebody who I struggle with the concept of death. It's inevitable. I can't escape it, but like I was like seriously terrified to even think about that myself or my loved ones. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. And, you know, I've lost loved ones through death. Eventually, it happens. It's inevitable. It's part of the journey. So I say that now kind of more cavalier and really like it's not like I'm so accepting. But it took up until this point, it took a lifetime for me almost to get to this point. Where I can be a little bit more comfortable with having a dialogue and having a conversation about death. And that is because for a very long time, I was terrified. And if you knew me, you would know I was terrified. Like I was really afraid. And becoming more spiritual, definitely embracing being a witch, helped me to kind of reconcile my ideas about death and what that would mean for me and what that would look like. So the good thing is I'm no longer in that position. I'm no longer feeling that way, but it took a lot of work for me to get there. And one of the ways that it started was just to open my mind up to the idea that, or let me rephrase that, to open my mind up to start to think about what is death? What do I believe death means? What is that outside of the physical body is no longer animated? There's something that just stops working. And when the body stops working, I had to start to ask myself real tough questions. Now, I had to ask these questions without being in the lens of any organized religion, which is like Christianity, you know, basically the Judeo-Christian belief system. Like I had to let that go. I had to release my ideas about death and afterlife without the Christian view. So once I started thinking more about that and opening, first of all, step one was being open to start thinking about these sort of things. Step two was thinking it and willing to kind of go down a rabbit hole. And at first not making it personal, just like in general, high level. What do I think happens? What do I think it is to be dead? Is there a soul? You know, those sorts of questions. Do I really believe it? Now, quite frankly, this wasn't not something I could answer in one sitting. I had to think about this. And this was something I thought about for a while because I wasn't sure for a while, and I almost was kind of my views were leaning definitely more toward atheist. And at one point I probably would have just started calling myself an atheist. I definitely was in line with their way of thinking about things. I'm just thinking I thought it was just over. Like lights out, you're done. In the same way you didn't exist, you just stopped existing and that's it. The idea of a soul, all of that doesn't exist. You're just dead. And, you know, this was me figuring it out. And I was really thinking that for quite some time. I didn't have to talk about this with anybody, so it really came up. And if it did, I had the good sense to not necessarily, you know, share that's what I really deeply thought. And then over time, I definitely got more into witchcraft and more into spirituality. And with that, I was able to learn more and experience more, and things that were not explained, paranormal activity, messages that would have only come from the dead, the feeling of physically being touched, even though I'm the only one in the room, dreams that were so prolific, so profound, and that had so many other meanings that they didn't come from my mind because I didn't know those things. And when I would repeat it and someone else knew, you know, messages were coming through. And just other series of events that I had started to experience over time. It wasn't only once. And that's when I had to expand on that question. I had to start thinking a little bit differently. But see, I didn't celebrate Samhain at those times in my beginning days of being a witch. I wanted to, and I knew it was something that was probably important to my practice, but I was still grappling with my ideas about death. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of jammed up when we're talking about celebrating these, what we call the high holidays, or like Samhain, or AKA Halloween, right? The Day of the Dead. For some people, if you didn't grow up in a certain type of culture, that it's just automatically understood that you're honoring the dead and you already have ancestor veneration occurring. If you don't have that, it's very jarring. And even for some of us who are seeking answers and connection and wanting to understand more, it could take some time to wrap your mind around all of this. So trying to come into this particular season that we're coming into, because Samhain is one day, but it's really a season. The energy of that day is now. And you can kind of feel, well, you can feel it occurring now. When I do readings, those readings are a lot more intense than they honestly usually are. My dreams are a lot more intense. The witches that I converse with, they're also experiencing things. So for those who are open, you feel it. If you are not acquainted with and I say acquainted because you may not have a definitive idea, but if you're not acquainted with some sort of philosophy on death and the afterlife or lack thereof, you won't really, as a witch, you're going to really have a difficult time partaking in the celebrations outside of just the commercial Halloween aspect of October 31st, Samhain, or the entire season for that matter. You're gonna have a hard time. I know I did. And I wanted to make it special. And I didn't understand. I always felt like in my beginning days of being a witch that I was just pretending anyway. I felt like everything I was doing, I was just pretending. And that's not a great feeling to always feel like you're pretending something. So it made it tough. Sometimes I had a lot of false starts. I start, then I stop, start, then I stop because I was feeling like this. So let me just say this about that situation. That didn't do me. I mean, in my timing, I got here, but boy, it would have been nice if I gotten here sooner. Less confusion. I would have had a lot more answers quicker if I just stayed the course. But I know a big part of witchcraft for me has been accepting my views on death. Because as a witch, you are working with spirit. Maybe you're not working with ancestors, but spirit usually is some sort of maybe existing, maybe deity, maybe they actually walked the earth who became a deity, maybe it was an energy that at some point took a shape in form of humanoid and they walked the earth. Not to mention some of the deities that we honor and we work with may have at some point actually had been in human form and walked the earth. So they mean they died. So if they died, you clearly have some views on death if you're attempting to work with them, is my point. And I think it's worthy of having a conversation with yourself. You don't have to explain anything to anybody. I would start with the question of what are your views on death? do you believe people really have a soul? And let me tell you something, that matters if you think that or not. That's where it starts, because it's hard to get over to talking about the afterlife if you aren't really definitively comfortable with the concept that people have souls. So it's not a soul. So what do you think makes us work? What makes us go? We know our heart, like from the physical point of view, your heart's pumping, you got the brain, everything's all in tune. There's a rhythm to this, right? The blood pumping, there's literally a rhythm, which there's some spirituality to that. So, but you know, and then we're animated beings. So when the machine that is the body, the organs, if something fails and it's no longer working, are you comfortable with the idea that there is a soul, some sort of energy that is released from the body once that occurs? And if you're not, which is fine, what else do you think happens? Do you think that was just the experience? Do you believe you go into the ground and, you know, you basically decompose and you just become one with the earth and that's it? And you live through your children because they have your DNA? Because that's kind of where I was. That's where I was thinking initially a lot. Now, my views at this point, which I'll share, is that I graduated from just thinking that to, I do believe there's an essence, there's an energy signature that is us. There is something that is us outside of flesh and bone and blood. And I do believe that when we expire, these bodies, these physical forms expire, that the body goes to the earth, but the essence, the spirit, goes to the stars, not to a heaven. See, this is not heaven, to the stars, to the ether, to what cannot be seen with the naked eye. And now, why is that? Why can't we see? Because I think it would interfere with the human experience, and you've already had your turn. So you don't get to interact on that level like a human would, you know, and, you know, with the needs of the body, you know, hunger and, you know, desires and all that sort of stuff. That's why one of the things that I realized with me with ancestor veneration, I never could wrap my mind around the idea of, and controversial moment here, like cooking food and sitting it out, like a whole plate of food and just sitting on, like, you know, my ancestor altar. And I never felt that call. I've never felt an ancestor, and maybe something will change because just like my views changed before, but I've never felt that. I've never had an ancestor ask for something like that, or even alcohol for that matter. I've never felt that. But also the way my views are set, I believe that they are no longer in wanting those human things. And if they are wanting those, for me, the way I think that maybe they haven't completely ascended, you know, which is fine if an ancestor comes to me and they haven't completely ascended, because I think there's level to the ancestral realm. And that's because I feel like I've kind of been told that, but I feel like it's an overall collective. No one individual stands out. Typically as time goes on. Initially there's a process, but I'm sharing what I think. There's initially a process. I don't know how long that process is. I don't think time works the same, so there's no way for me to calculate that, if that's even possible. I just know that shortly after a death, I find it interesting that a spirit of the deceased will visit people, you know, someone close to them, and say their last goodbye, usually to give a message or something like that. And then for a while, you might hear from them, but you might not. I've experienced that. I know several other people where while you just didn't hear from them, then all of a sudden, years later, you felt them again. You know, a scent in the air that only was attributed to them, in a place that made no sense for that particular scent to be there. It just didn't make any sense. A song that shouldn't be playing on the radio in contemporary times starts playing. They're not even doing like an old bag. It's just, and then you don't hear it just that once. You know, you're someplace else, you hear it again. It doesn't, like, you're trying to make the connections. You know, things of that nature. You know, all of a sudden you're hearing other people, family members, maybe it was a family member, all of a sudden talking about this person, there are clearly, their presence is, their energy signature is here. It's being felt by us humans, us earthly beings. So I do wonder if maybe there is, like I said, there's levels to it. So they're in the process of ascending to whatever master level ancestral label. I don't know what it is. I guess I'll find out on the back end. But for now, I do wonder if there's some sort of process. And I know that in some spiritual systems, this is taught. That there may be. And I do believe that there probably is, from what I'm gathering in my experiences speaking with the ancestral realm. For me to get to this point and to be talking this way, the amount of work, and I just want to repeat, it was tremendous. Shadow work, journaling, having conversations that made me want to stop. I didn't want to have this conversation. I don't want to think about it. Thinking about me dying, my kids, my mom, anybody I know, like, I don't want to think about that. But especially me, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I remember being in that space, and that's very scary. But at the same time, as I begin to embrace the nature and the seasons and the circular situation that is the seasons, it comes around, it goes again, spring and then fall and, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually winter dies and then we start all over again. Once you are intentionally tuned into that, and that's why I'm a witch who works by the wheel of the year, because it served me well. That has everything to do with a better understanding and feeling a little bit more comfortable with death, and also feeling comfortable with not knowing everything. By the way, I will not sit here and tell you I know for a fact this is the one true way. That's it. It's my way. That's it. Because that's religious dogma. And I mean, aren't we all a little sick of that? I know I am. That's why I don't subscribe to any of that. Also, well, yeah, I won't go on a tangent on that. I do believe, and this is, based on, right now, nothing has proven me wrong based on my firsthand experience, attempting to work within a spirit realm, attempting to connect with my ancestors. Nothing has told me differently. Because I am so accepting of the concepts, and then I've developed my own ideas and my own opinions and my own sort of foundational beliefs around it. Using tarot cards, using oracle cards, or any other divination tools is why I can do that. It's why I can sit and be, over here, doing readings for people and having conversations. And if something comes through, I don't always know who it is or what's going on, but I'm getting, whether a spirit or maybe their ancestor talking to me. Because I've done the work to sort of reconcile that, is why I can be good at that. Because I think if you have trouble with the idea of death, I can't imagine, I can compartmentalize a lot of things, but how are you, how does one do that? To me, it feels like you believe, but you really don't. You believe the messages on the cards, you believe your intuition, but deep down you truly don't believe, because where do you think these messages are coming from? Whose voice is it? What is the image, the thought form being implanted in your head? Where do you truly believe it comes from? These are other questions you should start to ask yourself, especially if you're someone who feels like you might be psychic or medium or things like that, and you're not working in a professional capacity, but it's there, but you're kind of just living your life, not really dealing with it though. When those messages come through, you should start to think about that. And then when Samhain comes, and then eventually, quite frankly, Yule, because Yule, that whole time is a celebration of light. Why are we celebrating light then? Because there's an absence of it. There's a seasonal, but then there's a death component to that as well. Everything's dead and frozen, or at least it seems like everything's dead. There's no life on the vine, you know, on the trees. Everything looks barren. And for all intents and purposes, it is. Everything is dormant at that point, which looks like death. So I imagine if because when I know I was going through some things and I was still trying to figure it out, seasonal depression definitely hit harder for me at the time. I wasn't living here in Arizona. It's not the same here. Maybe that's why I want to live in a climate like I live in, because I don't really do the winter very well. There's beauty in it, and I can find that, and I'm okay with visiting, but I don't know about living full time. Not at this point in my life. There's something that it does to my psyche, having days that are bitter cold, and there's not really a lot of sun, and it's just cold and, you know, drab and gray. That does something to me mentally and emotionally, and quite frankly, I think spiritually that I just don't do well there. So, and I do believe it does have a death component tied to it that I think is a little too on the nose, and I can't handle that. I don't. But here's the thing. I've done so much work on myself, asking these hard questions and really giving myself an opportunity to answer them. And it's not to sit down and answer one question and then you solved everything. Like, this was something that took me over a period of time, like years off and on, of re-asking myself this question and redefining sometimes what I initially thought. But yeah, but I can sit here, so I'm not speaking from a place of being perfect and knowing everything and I have all the answers. It's more like, at least I know how to ask myself the right questions. I know where to start if I ever get tangled up in too much fear around it, because I can come back again, especially if we're talking loved ones. If there's something that happens right now to somebody I care about, something happens and they're, you know, facing death as, you know, accident, something like that, and they're like, oh, they might die. Yeah, the fear is gonna go through me. I'm gonna feel sadness because I don't want that to happen to them. So that doesn't take that away. There's still that. Like, I know life is precious. I know that in this form, in this time, we get this shot at this. If you believe in reincarnation, which I haven't even touched into, then, you know, maybe you get another do-over if you do. I haven't made up my mind about that. I believe that our spirit goes into, eventually, the ancestral realm is the overall collective. At least that's how they've appeared to me. My ancestors have appeared to me as basically dark figures, no actual facial features like human features, but humanoid in shape. No hair, jewelry, just like this shadow of a human. But, you know, just the head, the neck, arms, like, you know, what people think aliens look like. But not that much detail. More like literal shadows, to be perfectly honest. And they've come to me again and again in this form. So I've had dreams throughout the years, and whenever they come to me, and also when I'm intentionally reaching out to them, that is how they appear to me. But they're a collective. Not one is standing out. I remember normally when I'm intending to go, they're usually just the ones up front, and I can see movement. Like there's usually like a fire and someone's tending it, and we're usually sitting by the fire. It feels very ancient. It feels otherworldly. It feels like something, I don't know, like from a time that's way gone by. And usually it's like I don't hear like a voice, but a communication is still actually occurring, if that makes sense. Like the thoughts are just implanted in my head versus a voice. But it's a collective. I feel like there's like a bunch of other dark figures really packed together, behind just the ones in the front. So it's never just the one in the front. It's the whole crew, and I can't see as far because the rest is usually shrouded in darkness. And it's just that light of the fire that I can just be there. And there's never a full face that I can see. There's always like a shroud whenever I see them. And this has been my experience for years working with my ancestors. I'm not against, for me, by the way, personalizing, working with a specific ancestor, meaning like having an ancestor altar for like one person. So your grandmom, your grandfather, parent, whatever, right? Or whoever, you know, was close to you, you know, you'd have their picture, stuff like that. And I definitely can understand that. For me though, because I've had that experience, I know that through whatever their ascending processes, I feel like it just becomes the collective. So when I hear other people talk about these experiences, this person came back and, you know, they like, it's almost like this forever parent-child relationship. And that's how they see their ancestors. And for me, that's where I think most likely these people probably were raised in a religious household or was exposed to Christianity or some Judeo-Christian beliefs. And a lot of that is influencing their experience. I've talked about this before, of learning to, before they were saying decolonize your spirituality. I did the work of doing that. And I swear that video is coming. That's going to be a lot of work for me, but it's coming. On decolonizing my spirituality. That took me years. And I really didn't have a lot of help, I'll be honest with you, because almost every single person in my life, even the supporting people, were still like, yeah, you know, but that's all they had for me was like, yeah, but I could tell they still was like, but what if God is real? What if the Christian God is real? What if this concept, these things that they're, you know, that we've been told, what if it is real and you're going against it? Like, do you want to gamble your soul, your everlasting life with that? So as time, you know, and these are people who were supportive. So it's not that anybody, but that, you know, that was the consensus I felt. So the amount of work that I've done is exponential. And it's a lot for this little black girl from Camden, New Jersey, who did not grow up around people who do what I do right now, who, or at least outwardly, or think how I thought, at least outwardly. I'm not in their heads. And I don't say that because I think I'm better than anybody. It's more like, I didn't know, this is all me. Like, but when you have something that is pulling you, no matter what, like I've always had interest in the occult. Always, it's always been fascinating to me on some level. Scared the bejeebus out of me. But I've always been interested. And I was scared because it was just ignorance. And that's how but I was a child, by the way, when this was happening. It's odd to me when I see adults and they seem scared the way they are. And I understand it, and I give them a lot of grace for that, because if I'd never heeded the call that I felt a strong pull, I might have popped. I mean, I don't see it, but maybe somehow I would have ended up like that, and, you know, calling everything demonic and everything is scary. And that's more of a cultural thing for sure, because I know for a fact that within Black American culture, that's something we need to reconcile. Things that we don't understand, forces, things that seem paranormal. The default is it's negative. And I'm just thinking how many of us, because of the Atlantic slave trade, have missed our birthright, have missed our true calling. I wonder if there's so many of us walking around who have this natural ability to be in these other realms, and think they're crazy, you know, or think that Satan's out to get them. And Satan has made up the whole thing. Oh my gosh. And it's like, there's some Catholic priests that was talking about, I think the guy's deceased now, but there's an interview going around right now where he's basically saying, there's several people who are, learned men, they went to do the whole theology college thing for Christianity and all that sort of stuff. And they are saying, no, there is no such thing. Dante's Inferno is the reason why a lot of my people, Black Americans, that's what they really think hell is. Like, they really do. It's a literal translation. But they don't know all of that because, these evil people who captured my ancestors, many years of keeping them ignorant and only giving them a Bible. They couldn't necessarily read it, but they were told, and then giving them a slave version of a Bible. Years of this, hundreds of years of this, of just consistently, systematically, very evil work of just bending the will of a people, or attempting to bending the will of a people for their greed. And eventually for our bodies, for medical procedures and things like that. And I know you're thinking, what the heck does this have to do with anything? Because it's always deeper than what it seems on the surface. It's never just that simple. It's never just, oh, these people should just know, like, why don't they listen? No, I give my people grace because I'm one of the people. And I understand how they got there because I was indoctrinated as well from being a little kid and coming up and believing these things. And I prayed. I had so much guilt around sexuality, which led to, quite frankly, an unplanned pregnancy because instead of getting education, I just was in a shame and guilt spiral over something that was very natural for me. If I just had the education, I wouldn't have had an unplanned pregnancy, but I do love my kids though. I do love my babies. They grow. I do love them very much so. But you see what I'm saying? Like but you don't know what you don't know. And as we get older, there's so many uncertainties. You really want to hope this is the good thing. You really want to hope when your grandma laid hands on you, put the olive oil on your forehead, put the cross, you really want to believe that she was keeping the evil away from you. It's important for you to believe that because so much of who you are is built on that. So I'm not being condescending. I'm not like being insensitive. Because I was somebody who had to reconcile that, by the way, whose, auntie put the cross with olive oil on their forehead and said a prayer when there was some injury or something going on. When I learned to start to do that myself, I had to believe that was working when bad things happened to a little girl and I was looking for refuge and to feel protected. It was important for me to believe that all of that was very real. So yeah, I had to take all of that and piece by piece and memory, and then things that would come up that I didn't even know was going to be a religious thing or some religious influence. But as it came up, it did. Like, okay, again, back around the concept of sexuality and being like, around other people, let me just be clear. So being around someone who's gay at the time, I'm talking about younger me. So being around somebody like a young adult me, being around somebody who's gay with my views, and I don't know where in the Bible to go point it out, but I just know it's considered a sin. This is what I'm thinking. I just know it's a sin. I know it's wrong. By the way, we have adults, people in political offices who think like this. I don't know what scripture says, but I know it's wrong. But that's how I thought too. And just having to, when I, was in my mind where I was trying to decolonize all of that, and just kind of like, you think, okay, well, I'm good now. I've kind of stripped away all of the dogma that I've been taught since I was a little girl. And then you're in a situation like that, and you're like, why do I feel uncomfortable? Why do I feel like something's wrong because I see these same-sex people together. And I would question, but here's the thing I'm willing to do the work on. Why is it wrong? Why do I think it's wrong? What is it about this that's wrong? And asking myself those types of questions. But see, that was the holdover from the religion stuff. So here, you know, I remember reaching a point thinking I was divorced of all of it completely. But those are those moments that will pop up where it's like, ooh, you got to get back in. You got to do some more work. It's not done. And you need to figure out why. Because you're this free spirit. You're open to so many other things. Why does this bother you? I mean, what is it about seeing this that's causing some kind of like visceral reaction? You know, and I had to reconcile that. And it was just a religious dogma. I hadn't contended with that because it just hadn't come up yet. Gratefully, these many years later, where I'm at now, I don't have any of that left. And if you are looking to kind of to get to this point where I'm at right now, honestly, I really don't have time for it. Like, one of the problems I have is when I'm trying to have a conversation, especially if I'm talking to someone who's identifying as a witch, what you do, how you do your practice, live your life. But if you and I are speaking and you are referencing the Bible, all right, I might give you one, maybe two times because, you know, it might make your point. It might be making your point depending on what you're talking about. It may make your point. But maybe one or two times, I probably wouldn't want to keep talking to you because I am being as respectful as I can. But for me, it would be like I'm quoting Practical Magic to you, the book Practical Magic by Miss Hoffman, Alice Hoffman. Is her name Alice Hoffman? Am I saying that right? Is that the author's name? Yeah, Practical Magic. If I started quoting lines from the book, the actual book, the OG, the original book, if I started quoting you lines to prove my point, first you'd be like, oh, okay, interesting that you brought that up. Okay. Second time, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's say the point was made. You was like, oh, cool. I don't really know the book that well, but okay. By the third time, you're looking like, why is she telling me this? That's what I feel about when people quote the Bible. I just picked a book, but yeah, that's literally how I feel. I'm like, that's one, that's two. Okay, you know. If I'm talking to you about this, you probably have an idea that I'm not really someone who follows the teachings of the Bible. And I don't think it's really that helpful. I don't see the help more than the hurt that it has caused, especially with my people specifically. So I'm not really seeing it. I don't see the positives. That's one of the problems I have with the idea of a lot of hoodoo and practicing it. And again, another controversial thing on the way it's practiced by a lot of practitioners. And they say, a lot of people agree you can't separate hoodoo from the Bible. And I was like, cool, that's why I'm a cottage witch, but I got you. But guess what? I'm working hoodoo, what you would call hoodoo over here. I am not invoking the Christian God because I think the Christian God is some sort of entity that I don't really want to deal with because I don't think he really F with people that look like me. That's just my opinion because I don't see it. I don't see it. But I digress. Since I'm stirring up trouble, I digress. But coming into my own and my own mind and my own thoughts, and it's not about convincing someone. It's not about sharing these thoughts. I'm purposely sharing them now to make a greater point, which is that if I hadn't done this coming into this other season, I never really would have felt it. I never really would have been able to experience in a way that I truly wanted to experience the Day of the Dead and Samhain. I never would have had that because you have to be open to it first off, and then reconcile your thoughts on everything. And if you are not Christian, you don't call yourself Christian, then why are you still holding on to the dogma? Why are you leaving such a void? Because, okay, so you know you don't believe in the concept of heaven and hell. You're comfortable with that. Like, yeah, I'm not really good with that. Like, I don't think that makes sense. you know, a place where, you know, the virgins are celebrated. Like, something about that don't sound right to you? Cool. And the concept of your soul being in an eternal flame burning doesn't really jive with you as well. Cool. So you just go through your life, you're practicing witchcraft, you're doing spells, you do divination, but you just like, well, yeah, you're just not thinking about it at all. That's where I think you need to come back. Let's start over again. In this void that you've now taken away, this dogma that filled it up, what do you actually feel? What do you actually think? And if you don't know, that's fine, but maybe start thinking about it a little bit more to see if you can formulate some answers for yourself. Because once you do, and here we are at this time of the year, and it's a cycle, as long as you're alive, you'll experience it. You can truly, I don't even want to just celebrate, you can truly take advantage of what's really happening right now with this veil thinning. It is an opportunity to talk, not just the immediate ancestors. This is great for, by the way, if you're someone who's adopted or you don't know who your birth family is for whatever reason. You don't know your lineage. You might know your mama's family, but you don't know who your daddy family is, because unfortunately that's real, because ain't nobody telling you the truth. This is an opportunity for, it doesn't, when we say ancestors, people immediately think about immediate people that died, like in the ones they know. Yeah, you have connections to since the beginning. So that energy, though, that can come through to you. Their energy, their essence can come through to you. And I think that's why it feels like, why can't it just take I wish they could take a material form and just talk to me and tell me things. Well, this is a time, I haven't had that experience. Some people can see it in their mind's eye, the actual manifestation of the person or what they once were. For me, it's definitely scent, definitely sound, and I like to say thought forms. Like, there's just like, it's not my thinking, it's not my thoughts, it just sort of pops into my head. And I know I'm communicating, but I like to use tools to navigate those conversations and navigate that interaction. I like to use tarot cards or oracle cards, but mostly tarot. To get to that, you see what I mean? Like, to sit down, you know, if you're going to light a candle, cast a circle, if you're going to do that, which I suggest you might want to do that, by the way. If you're willing to do this type of work, you want to not be afraid. You want to not be afraid, because I will say this, and I don't speak too much about this, but there are other entities out there. There's no demons or demonic or devil in the craft, in witchcraft. There really isn't. So I don't speak like that. So I would say lower form entities, maybe entities that didn't want to cross over. If you believe in reincarnation, maybe they got stuck in between. I don't know. I wonder to what end. Like, I believe there's a natural cycle, so they couldn't beat death. Maybe their attempt to beat death, they got caught in the middle of kind of in and out of the spirit realm, and they're trying to avoid. You'll see movies like the person didn't go into the light, and I think that's how you get ghosts that haunt places, because they just didn't want to cross over. But at some point you have to believe there's a reckoning with that too. I don't know how long that process takes, but anyway, I digress, because I be going on these tangents, so I'll be losing my place. I say all this, let me get back to my point. I'm trying to find my point, get back. I say all this to say, in order to really experience all of this, like getting into having those conversations with those who cross over, learning more about your lineage, you might be told things that no one living would know. They can come to you in your dreams. They can come to you if you're intentionally casting a circle, or forget the circle. If you're intentionally just, hopefully you're protected. Let's just say, please be protected. You're intentionally communicating and reaching out around this time. And I mean, starting now. If you're intentionally doing that and these messages are coming through, you don't want to be in a place of fear. You want to be in a place of openness. Yes, protected, but open, so that you can receive messages. And it could be something that could change your whole life, or it might be something that just makes you feel better about things and answers questions you've always had. You might have to give a message to somebody else that could change everything for them or make everything just a little bit better. Or, you know, quite frankly, it could be something you don't know. It could be a big life change because of that interaction. It could set you up so now you're like, holy crap, I talk to the dead. And that could change your whole life at that point once you realize you can do that at will. Like, you can communicate with the dead. And that may change your views on life and everything, and just kind of how you move through your life going forward. I know that did for me when I realized this is not something I'm just making up. I'm not imagining it. Because I saw us today. Am I just imagining it? Trust me, anything you could think of, anything that anyone has ever tried to hurl at me saying, oh, you know, you're just playing pretend, it's all made up. Oh no, I've already done that to myself. I've already thought that. I've already tried to complain, like make that a thing. And in fact, it's not. It's not. Hopefully you get the message of what I'm trying to say and what I've been trying to communicate on, just how important it is to reconcile your thoughts on death and if there's an afterlife, and what is a soul, and is there a soul, and what does that mean? I explained a little bit. A soul to me is like your essence. It's something that you can't see with the naked eye, but it is what makes me me. It's the personality part, you know, too. There's a reason that we act a certain way because of the chemicals in our body and our hormones. And that's personality as well, by the way. That can make you happy, sad, angry, all that sort of stuff. But there's this other part of us, this essence, and you can call that a soul, your spirit. And I think, yeah, I do believe that it exists. And I believe that it will connect with the others. And it doesn't communicate the way we communicate as humans because it is no longer human. And the longer it is connected in the ancestral realm, the spirit realm, I think it becomes more difficult to communicate to us as if they were human versus when they first die. If you've noticed, it's a different type of communication. That's when you get like signs and symbols, colors, like a vision, an image. They give you that because there's no, you know, communication. Then there's, you know, I guess there's possession and things like that. But I would be very concerned about, I don't think those ascended spirits or souls want to take possession of a human. And if they did, I'd be concerned about that type of possession. I'm talking like people, your ancestors who are deceased in this ancestral realm. I realize like spirit possession by actually different types of spirits, like deity type level is different. I'm talking about like people who died. Like, you know, your great uncle. That's what I'm talking about. I would be a little concerned if they tried to take possession of me. I don't invite that, by the way. I was like, we can communicate. I'm gonna say me, and you're gonna say you, and we're gonna communicate. That's how I see that connection, by the way. All right, so I think I've said enough. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And I swear I'm working on that decolonizing your spirituality and kind of going through a lot of what I went through and over the years and condensing it. And hopefully I can help somebody else out with that, because that saved, when I say saved my life, it sounds dramatic, but it saved my life in a way of like, I live so much better now than I would have lived in this constant state of fear that I used to live in. To be Christian and the way I'm taught, the way I was taught, is to be in a state of fear. And it's so, they speak it like it's normal to be in fear. A God-fearing man, a God-fearing woman, like the deities I work with, I don't fear them. I respect them. I don't want as someone, if I'm in a position of power, as being a parent or being a leader, I don't want people to fear me. I would prefer, I ultimately would like you to respect me. I don't want you to fear me. I think if you have to be fearful, you don't make rational decisions. You are blinded by your faith, and critical thinking goes out the window, and anything that might be displeasing to that deity, you're going to be very afraid of it. And you're going to probably, most people, when they become fearful, they get angry. Like, that's the next thing that follows, and just like this irrational anger. And I think that's why we see a lot of stuff, like when Beyonce introduced the Renaissance tour, you have people talking about it's demonic and all that sort of stuff, or the people, you know, in your family, and this is not just Black American experience, this is everybody else too. You know, people think everything's the devil. Yeah, that's where that's coming from. And then they get mad at you because how dare you be into the devil? I don't know. My thing is, if your God is so powerful, why don't, if he could punish me, right? That's what you keep telling me. I mean, but if we're going to talk about gods and goddesses punishing people, do you want me to go get mine? Because mine, you might not like that. You might not like how they work. But I'll end it here. Thanks again for watching. I'm Mika. This is Leap Taken. Please hit like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already. And again, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or your thoughts on this topic of death and Samhain and coming into this season of life where we are right now, going into the autumn and eventually winter, where, you know, things are gonna be dormant and it's a time of death until there's light again. All right, I hope everybody stays safe out there. Connect with the dead, if you will, and yeah, stay protected. All right, bye.